Okay, so one more time, I'm just going to demonstrate the colors that we're going to use. Today you need to have a plate like this, 2 different yellows, 1 large thing of white in the center, a little bit of red, a little bit of black, a little bit of blue, a good amount of green actually. And then for brushes, just going to use, well, I'm using a large flat because I'm using a large screen to demonstrate, but you can use a flat brush of any size that you have. Something like this would probably work really well unless you have a huge canvas. Or you can, and then you can use a medium size pointed brush like this. So this is a round brush. And just 1 small brush for details, a small round brush for details. So anything like these colors, I mean, anything like these brushes, wonderful, it'll work. And if you don't have these brushes, we'll make it work even without them. And even for the colors, if yours are slightly different than mine, don't worry about it. Let's say your blue has a little more green in it. It's still going to be a really beautiful painting. One thing I also like to mention before we get started, so this is the painting we're going to be working on today. Okay, now this is a pretty detailed looking painting, right? You could see a good amount of detail in here, but that might not be your style. If you don't like to have a lot of detail in your paintings, or maybe you're not big into having like really straight lines and you like things a little messier in your painting, don't try to force it to be just like this one. I'm going to demonstrate for you some ways of using your paintbrush, how to move your paintbrush, some ways of blending the paint together, some ways of mixing colors, but there's lots of room for everybody's individual style. Some people like more bold brush strokes, and you can see a lot of the paint is really, kind of sticks out. You see a lot of texture to the paint. Some people barely like to use any paint on their canvas, and that's okay too. Just kind of try to follow along as best you can with at least the techniques that I'm using for the brush strokes, for the blending. And if your painting comes out looking very different than mine, that's okay. You probably will have learned something about blending, about making trees, about colors, and I have a feeling you're going to love your painting when you're done. This is a really fun painting. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to just put that right there for a reference. And got my plate of paint. I also have a bowl of water and just some napkins or paper towels or something that you can kind of wipe the paint on as you go along. So I'm going to start with my large flat brush. First thing, I always try to start with something really simple. So go ahead and dip that large flat brush in the water. Get it nice and moist. Okay, and then just kind of dab it on your napkin just a little bit. So using that large flat brush. Okay, so just going to get a little bit of blue paint on the brush. Just a little bit of blue paint. Okay, and then a good amount of white paint. So I'm going to make a light blue. Light blue, just a little bit of blue, a lot of white. And then I'm going to let those two kind of blend together in the center of my palette. A nice light blue, a little bit of blue, a lot of white. Let's let those blend together in the center of the palette. And this is gonna be, my brush is a little bit wet, and that's good. I want this paint to stay nice and moist, so you can even actually add another dab of water to that mixture. Get a nice liquidy light blue. And once you've got that light blue, just go ahead and fill in the whole top part of your canvas with this color, right down to about, I will leave about that much at the bottom. Leaving about that much at the bottom. But everything else is going to get a little layer of this light blue paint. And I'm not really concerned much about my technique for putting the paint on right now, because I'm just trying to get the paint onto the canvas. So that paint does, that light blue paint does come all the way down. It's more than halfway down the canvas. So if you notice, like let's say that's my halfway point there, I'm coming even further down. I'm only leaving maybe a quarter, not even a quarter of the canvas without paint on it right now. And again, if you have any questions whatsoever while you're working, just go ahead and take yourself off mute. Now I'm gonna have to catch this next step while the paint is still wet. So I'm gonna kind of come right back in there with that same brush, and just while the paint is still wet, just gonna take a tiny little dab of pure blue paint, just a little dab on the corner of my brush like that. And just at the top of the canvas, just bring down a little bit of blue paint, nice and messy. Messy is fun in this painting, especially in the sky. Just a little dab of blue right at the top, and then just see how I'm letting it kind of blend its way down into the rest of the sky. Just a little more blue at the top. And just have fun with it. It can be any old brush stroke you want. I really enjoy mixing my paint on the canvas. Just working wet paint on wet paint and seeing what happens. Just a little bit of blue at the top. This paint is so wet, the blue doesn't even want to stick around. There we go. It really didn't make that much of a difference. just a little blue at the top, but I want it to blend. And I'm just going to show you a little up close of that, just so you can see. It really isn't that much of a difference. It's just a little tiny bit darker at the top. And it's up to you if you want to be able to see those brush strokes or have them blended right in. It's really up to you. Okay, we're going to keep going while that paint is still wet. And I'm not even going to rinse off my brush. I'm going to keep on going with that same brush. And this time I'm going to just take some white paint with the corner of my brush like that. Just take a little bit of white paint right in the corner. And somewhere, wherever that blue stops, I'm just going to bring in a few brush strokes of pure white. Nice and messy. If you notice, I'm kind of moving my brush back and forth a little bit. Just a few little dabs of white in there. Maybe a little bit more as it comes down here. A little more white. Not really doing this over the whole sky, just kind of a little bit left of the center. And your paint should still be nice and wet, easy to work with. And I'm going to bring this in and kind of get a feel for what I just did there. Nothing terribly dramatic. Just getting the feel of some little lighter areas in the sky. Okay, so this is not going to require much detail at all. This is just all very much so in the background. So just so that you have a basic rundown of what we just did, a little bit more blue at the top, a little bit more white in through here. And the rest of the canvas, the rest of the sky should be still a little bit damp. So now we're going to do something really fun. We're going to dive right into those trees off in the distance. No, don't be intimidated by these trees. They're actually pretty easy to do. I'm going to show you how to do it. But the first step is going to be just getting the hint of some trees off in the distance. So using that same brush without rinsing it at all. Does everybody still have a little area where they had some white and blue mixed together in the center of their plate? Okay, excellent. Let's make a little bit more of that white and blue combination. A little bit more of that light blue. Like that. And then we're going to add some green to it. So just going to take the corner of my brush, take a little chunk of green like that, and just mix it right into that combination. So that was white, blue, and now green. White, blue, and green. And I'm just going to fill up my large flat brush with that. Okay, so now this is the point where we need to figure out where the sky ends and the earth begins. I probably went a little too low. You want it about at a quarter of the canvas, so right about there. So below the halfway point, see wherever your halfway point is on the canvas, you want to come on down below that. And then just make yourself a nice little line across where the earth meets the sky. Like so. Okay. Now, once you've got your line there, let's start bringing up some brush strokes like this. We're just going to get some color in there to begin with. Just bring up a few little brush strokes. You see how I'm just kind of flipping my brush up like that? Just starting to get some color in there, that's all. We're not quite committing to anything just yet. We're just getting some color in there. Just a little wisp up like that. No definition just yet. A little bit of color. Okay. And please, please feel free to let me know if I'm going too slow or too fast. You guys can kind of guide me. Let me know. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in my first line of the trees in the background. I'll show you what I mean by that before I start. Okay, so do you see how we've got these tall trees kind of off in the distance here in the background? One of them goes really high, almost to the top of the canvas, like that. We'll start with that one. Oh, I like to start with my tallest tree first, and then I'll work my way down into the shorter ones, okay? So now, just so you know, we're gonna put trees everywhere back here, but a lot of them are gonna be covered over by the trees up front. Don't worry about that right now. We're just gonna enjoy making trees and get lots and lots of practice doing it. Okay, so you might need to add a little bit of water to that color that you made, that soft green color, because you want to be able to get some nice points with it. Okay, and I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to start with a line right here, well, somewhere in that area. And I'm going to come up, 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 up like this. Trying to go straight. It doesn't always work for me, but that's okay. And just before I get to the top of the canvas, I'm going to stop. Now see how there's a nice little point to that line? I'm going to just bring that up close so you can see a little better. Look at that point. So it's a pretty thin line. Comes up, 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 and it comes to a little bit of a point. That's going to be an important part for making trees. So try to have, you don't want to have too much paint on that brush. Add a little bit of water if it's not giving you a point, but try to get yourself a point there. And please let me know right away if you're having trouble getting a point, because I know there's another way we can do it. All right. I'm going to just keep on going unless I hear otherwise. So now I want some lower trees that come close by, but maybe just a little bit lower. How about this one comes up about there? Maybe another one next to it. Right about there. These can get pretty close together too. can always have a little bit of overlapping. Maybe one there. So right now, I'm just going to be filling in a whole bunch of lines like this. But the important thing I want you to really focus in on is that they don't all stop at the same point in the sky. Can everybody see that? Some are higher, some are lower. So the important thing is that you just try to get some variation here in how high those points go. So you don't want to have a straight line across where they're all exactly the same. I'm going to try to have a little bit of an up and down, because that's the way it is in the forest. All right, I'm going to keep on going. Make some more trees, or at least the start of more trees. Okay, just going to do a little up close again, so everybody can see. Can everybody see that good? Okay. So now we're going to get right back into those trees, and we're going to start adding some detail on there. Now I'm going to continue on with my flat brush, but I'm switching to a little bit of a smaller one for this. It's up to you what size works best for you. But for me, right about this size is going to work great for the rest of the trees. But the important thing is that you can get a little bit of a point to that. Okay, so let's keep on going with that color. You might have to add a little bit of water to it to get it so that it's nice and smooth. It works good for you. You almost want it to have the consistency of like a marker. Like if you were putting a marker onto the canvas, it would have that sort of feel to it. Okay, so add a little bit of water. Okay, now I'm gonna start at the top of the tree, and I'm using the corner of my brush. So not the flat part. I'm not putting it straight on. I'm gonna turn it just a little bit so it uses the corner. Now on the corner of your brush, you should be able to get almost like a point to that. So watch this. Let's get this up really close. If I just use the corner of my brush, and let's say I come up right near the top of one of those trees, look how I can just kind of add a little detailed point to the top. You can barely see it. Now I'm going to do the same thing to the other side, just a little bit of a point. Well, I'm going to demonstrate one tree, and you'll see once you get the hang of one tree, you can do them all, okay? All right, so let's keep on going. Still using the corner of that brush, I'm going to come down just a little ways and do the same thing, just a couple little dots. Just a couple little dots. using the corner of that brush. So what we're doing here is we're making the pointed top to those trees. I'm going to just show you on the finished tree so you can see what I'm talking about. This is what we're working on right now, those tops. Okay, we're going to keep going. Okay, so coming down just a little bit lower, I'm using just a little dotting motion as I'm coming down the tree. I keep on going down. We're just making the branches. Do you notice how my brush is kind of almost like, it's like bouncing on the canvas as I go down. Okay, and keep on going. Make sure you can see that up close. So as I'm going down the tree, I'm starting to get a little bit wider. And my branches come out just a little bit more. Each time I go down the tree, that branch gets a little bit wider and comes out just a little bit more. Okay, everybody can see that? See how the branches are starting to get a little wider as they go down? Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. I'm going to keep on going down the tree like this, the same technique, using the corner of my brush. And if you run out of paint at any point, just go ahead and make some more, or if it starts to dry out on you. Now, as you come down in the tree, especially after you get about halfway down the tree, you're going to want to start using more of your brush to do this. So let me just zoom in a little bit on that. You can see what I mean. So as you come down a little bit further in the tree, you can start using the whole brush to do the same thing. Just kind of zigzag its way down the tree, making some nice little branches as it goes. I'm just kind of using a zigzagging motion. It's okay if it bumps into the other trees. That's no big deal at all. I'm going to take that all the way down to the very bottom of the tree. Keep it going all the way down, even though you won't be able to see it. There you go. This is what I've got so far. Not too bad. So once you've got the hang of one tree, you can do them all the same way. And I'm just going to check in on everybody here. I'm just going to work through all these trees here. And I can do them really quickly because I've done a lot of them. But you take your time, whatever time you need to do this. And feel free to watch as many as you need to before you start doing them on your own. And about halfway down the tree is when I start using more of the brush. And it does a zigzag pattern as it goes down the rest of the tree. And this is where we don't worry about the details. And some of your trees are going to bump right into other trees. Don't worry about that. It's going to look very natural. After you do like 2 of these trees, you are officially an expert. And you'll have your very own style and way of making these trees. You'll figure out what works best for you. Everybody's trees always come out a little bit different. Trees are kind of like personalities. There's a huge variety. And they certainly don't have to be perfect. Okay. Now those trees are beautiful, and it's kind of sad that half of them are going to be covered by the time this painting is over. I'm going to miss them. But right now, I'm just going to enjoy and appreciate them. I hope everyone else is feeling the same way about their trees. Here, let me do a little bit of a close-up. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in a few darker trees right into the front. Now that's where I'll show you what it looks like in the finished painting. So see how we've got a few trees that really kind of stand out here in the front. They come right to the ground, but they kind of stand out in the front, and they stand out because they're a darker color. So I'll show you how we're going to make those. We don't need too many of them, just a few. So not even rinsing that brush, using that same brush, I'm going to take a nice big scoop of green and bring it into that color I was just using. So green, and then a scoop of blue, about the same proportion. So a scoop of green and a scoop of blue, and then I'm just bringing it right into the mixture I just used. So it's a little bit darker, but it's the same sort of color. Does that make sense to everybody? It's a little bit darker, but it's the same sort of color. All right. So especially in this area right in the front, I want to add a few more trees. So same process we used for the other ones, just a little line that comes up, but these don't come up nearly as far. Let's make maybe 5 of them right up front here. How about 6? Just for good measure. We'll just do a little tiny one over there. Okay. So it's the same process we used for the other trees. So you just kind of start with that little teeny dab at the top and then work your way down into the rest of the tree, the same motion. We're just repeating, since we're tree experts now, we're just going to repeat exactly what we just did with all those other trees, but these are just going to be a little bit darker, that's all. And these come nice and thick right at the bottom. You really want these nice and thick at the bottom. See that? Nice and thick at the bottom. And I'm going to go really fast with mine, but you take your time. Okay, so here's my little patch of darker trees right in the front. Can everybody see that okay? A little patch of darker trees. There's one more little detail we'll bring into the trees, but not until the very end. When we're finished with the other trees, then we'll add in some little highlights into some of our trees off in the distance. We won't even think about it right now, because at this point, we need to start getting in our grassy areas, our path, and our redwood trees. Now, one thing you might want to think about, this painting looks really good with or without the path. So if you're concerned about getting that sort of zigzag sort of shape in there for the path, if you're worried about it, don't worry. You can always go over it. If you don't like what came out, you can always go over it and just have grass there. It actually looks just as good. So I think it's a good idea to at least try and get the path in there, just to challenge yourself. But if you find it's too difficult or you don't like the way it comes out, because it's a little bit of perspective, then don't worry about it. You can always just go right over it afterwards. All right, so let's get started on this lower part. For this area, I'm going to rinse off that large brush. Give it a good rinse, get all the greens and blues off of there. We're switching to a whole nother color family here. So large brush. Give it a good rinse. Wipe it. Okay, so we're going to make a golden orangey color to start with in the grass area. So to make that color, I'm going to mix white and yellow. So a nice big clump of white like that, and a nice big clump of yellow, half and half, white and yellow. Go ahead and mix those two together. Now this is making a bright lemony yellow. That is not what I want for this grassy area. I want it to be almost like a brownish color. So we're going to keep working with this. So we got a light yellow here. Let's take a scoop of that, scoop of our light yellow. I'm going to bring it on over somewhere else in the plate and bring in a scoop of red. So mixing a scoop of red and a scoop of light yellow. Just a little bit of red.
I'm sorry, was the yellow with white and then a little bit of red?
Yep, yellow with white and then a little bit of red.
All right, thank you.
You got it. And just making a separate pile with that. Yellow with white and then a little bit of red. You may have to use another plate for this if it gets too messy. Now I went a little too much with my red there, so I need to bring in a little bit, another scoop of yellow into mine. You want it to kind of be an orange, a little bit of an orangey color. So I just brought in a little bit more yellow. That's all you do. If you go too far with your red, just bring in a little more yellow. This is where we're going to be doing a lot of color mixing here. Everybody's going to be color making experts by the time we're through with this. Okay, once you've got this kind of not very pretty color here, we're going to add a touch of blue to it. Just a little tiny bit of blue, mix it on in there. Just to darken it up a bit. And now, just the tiniest dot of black. I mean, like ever so tiny, just a really tiny bit of black. I told you, you're going to be color mixing experts here because we are getting towards a brown at this point. We're making our own brown.
Leah, do you think I need more red in mine?
Let me see.
Flesh colored.
You know what? I actually really like that.
Okay.
They're all going to be slightly different. I'm going to add a little more yellow to mine, actually.
Yeah, I put a ton of yellow. I think that's my main.
That's actually really good.
Okay.
You want it to be kind of a flesh color.
Okay.
Dile, tú.
Okay. I see a lot of confused looking faces. So, yes, just
Because mine is gray one.
it's gray.
Yes.
Okay, does it have that? See, you want it to have something like a skin color. So if it's too gray, add a little more yellow.
Not yellow. Okay.
Yep. If it's too, Olga, yours is beautiful. Yep, very nice. Yes, excellent. You want it to be something like a skin color. There's a lot of different skin colors, so it's okay if it's more red, it's more yellow, it's more brown. It doesn't matter. Somebody's skin color is what you want to have here. Okay, so once you've got your a little bit of a grassy, earthy color here, I'm going to start bringing in this color into the land here. And all I'm going to do for this is just fill everything in and using this sort of brush stroke. Just dashing and pulling. It comes right up to where the trees are. And just kind of dabbing it in there like that. Fill it in everywhere because we're just going to go right over it with everything else. But we need a good base of this color, a nice earthy color. And you might have to, if your paint is starting to dry out, just to add a little bit of water. Little dashes and just fill everything in with this color. Okay, so here's a little bit of a close-up version of the earthy color. Okay, let's get that path going. So using that same large brush, we are going to add to that color a little more red and a little more black. So we're going to darken it up a bit. A little more red and a little more black. And everybody's color is going to be a little bit different. That is quite all right. It's somewhere in the brown family. A little bit of a shadowy color. Okay, so for the path, all you have to do is take a deep breath and find the center of your canvas. So coming on, once you find the center of your canvas, come on down to where the earthy part is. And give yourself maybe a line, maybe 2 inches below where the earth starts. And just give yourself a little line right there, right in the center of your canvas. Just a little line like that. And I'll zoom in on it so you can see. See how you just left, it comes down about 2 inches from where the earthy part starts. And just a little line like that is where it all begins. So once you have that line in there, just going to make it grow a couple of inches across. So give it a little bit, just a couple of inches out like that. Okay. Now, once you have a little bit of a line there, we're going to come to the very end of that line, right about there. And we're just going to turn and get a little bit of an angle coming in here. Like that. So it got a little bit thicker with my brush. Did you see that? See how it got a little bit thicker with my brush when it came in at an angle? I went a little bit thicker with that line as it came in at an angle. Okay. Now I'm going to keep on going with that. Make it a little bit thicker. And have it loop on down like that. So loop on down like that. Now remember, if your path doesn't come out at all like you wanted it to, one of the signs of being a really good artist is taking something you didn't mean to do and turning it into something beautiful. So if you don't like anything about your path, then you can come back in and add other stuff all around it or cover it over with grass. It's up to you, but it's good to at least try it. Okay, so once we've got that little curve coming in, I'm gonna really thicken it up at the bottom and just fill it on in like this. Okay, so filling it on in. And it comes on down to the left side of the canvas. Okay, can everybody see that okay? It kind of looks like someone took the letter S and pushed it over so it's laying on the ground. I don't know if that helps or it makes it worse. To get the redwood trees in there, we're going to continue with a little bit of a darker color to start, just to get the base of those trees in there. And then, actually, before we even do the trees, there's one thing I want to do while we still have that color on there, is all along the path, I want to bring up some little bits of grass. So wherever your path starts, right, like just bring up a few little pieces of this brown grass. Just kind of get a little layer of grass going in there. This is a good color to just kind of break up your earthy area. I also want to do a little bit of this down here. We're just going to get a little bits of grass in here and there with this while we've got this color on our brush. Why not? Especially right in through here. You want to see a little layer of grass coming up there. And maybe some more pieces of grass over here. Okay. Okay, so to start with the trees, I am going to continue with that same color that I made, but I want to add a little bit more. I want to make a little bit more of this color. So to make more of it, I'm going to add another scoop of red, another scoop of yellow. Maybe could you put that AC on? And another scoop of black. So red, yellow, black. Just make a little bit more of a darker color. Red, yellow, black. And let's make ourselves some redwood trees. Go ahead and add a little bit of water to that mixture. Okay. So my first redwood's going to come up on the left side, and it really does come right off of the canvas. So I'm going to come down right about here in the grass, right about there, and just do a line. This part is super easy. Right at the edge of the canvas, and let it be the whole size of your paintbrush, right at the edge of your canvas. And it comes all the way up to the top of the painting, right off the top of the painting, just like that. Okay, so it's the whole left edge of the canvas. It's a beautiful redwood tree. Don't worry one little bit about those trees in the background. They know they take second place to the redwood trees. They cannot compete. Actually, these are not redwood. I keep calling them redwoods, but these are actually sequoias. These are the giant sequoias. But they could be redwoods too, actually. It's all up to you. So, nice thick line on the left edge. You can even make it a little bit wider than the brush. And once you've got it pretty much as a straight line, that's when you start to let the trunk kind of grow out. So you want it to get a little bit wider at the bottom and even have it just kind of wander off on its own towards the path. We're making a little root system here. Here, let me just go up close with this. So as it gets towards the bottom, your trunk starts to widen out. See that? And you've got a little root system developing here as it comes closer to the path. You got some little roots coming in there. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so now I'm going to come on over to the right side of the canvas, and I'm going to do 2 more trees the same way. One thing I just want you to notice about this, let me bring up the sample here. Okay, so look at how these trees, see how the roots come, this tree kind of overlap this tree. This is a really important part of the painting, and it gives it a lot of depth. So remember, when you're doing these 2 trees, they're pretty close together, but this one has a nice little overlap. Its root system comes down and overlaps, so you can tell which one is in front and which one is behind it. So keep that in mind as we're about to do the next 2 trees. Use that same color. If you have to make more, it was just red, yellow, and black. Okay. And it come just a little bit below where the path starts. Let's see. Come right about here. And it's about the width. I'm going to start with the width of my paintbrush and come straight on up. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. It can be a little wobbly if you want it to be. And then once you've got your line, these trees are about two brush strokes wide. So if you're using a flat brush, you're going to do maybe about 2 brush strokes wide. Or maybe a little less than 2 brush strokes wide. Okay, and the same thing happens at the bottom of this tree. You just make it a little bit wider at the root system. Almost like it's wearing a little skirt. Do a little zoom in of this one. Can everybody see that? Okay, excellent. Now this is where we're going to overlap with the other tree. Now, what I might recommend for showing the overlap, showing that the other tree is overlapping, just add a tiny bit more yellow to your mixture so it's just a little bit brighter. So I'm just adding a little more yellow so it looks a little bit brighter. Okay? And that tree is going to be almost right next to it. But you can see a space between the two. Like that. But the color is just slightly different. This one's a little more yellow. You can even make this tree slightly bigger as it is a little bit closer. It's up to you. haven't got the bottom part done yet, but just so you can kind of see the top. See how it's just a little tiny bit bigger, a little more yellow. I haven't added the roots in yet, but just so you can see what's going on at this point. Okay. So again, just a little reminder, in the root system, how it comes on this tree closest to the right, the root system does overlap. So that's what we're going to fill in now. So continuing on with that little bit of a brighter tree color. I'm going to come on in at the very bottom of this tree and have the root system kind of wrap on over the other one. Coming right on top of it. You won't see too much of it at this point until we add the black and the highlights, but it does kind of, you can see a little bit with the yellow. It just kind of sits right on top of it. And then on the other side, it kind of comes right off of the canvas. You want to get the feeling of a gigantic tree here. Okay. So at this point, we're going to take, give that large brush a little bit of a break. Actually, let me check in on everybody's tree here. See, is anybody having trouble with their trees? Nope. Olga, that's beautiful. Excellent. Yeah. Oh, very nice. Linda, very, very, very nice. Maria, very excellent, Maria. Very nice. Let me see. Oh, Pat. Ooh, you've got some great layers in the background there. I hadn't noticed that before. That is really beautiful. Okay, so at this point, we're gonna start bringing in some lighter colors into the trees. And every time we bring in a lighter layer in the trees, we're gonna take a little bit of that color and bring it on into the grass, some wispy sort of grass pieces of dried grass, okay? So let's start with the trees, and then whatever left over on that brush, you bring it into the grass too. So gonna switch on over to my medium-sized brush, the round one, medium round. Okay, now I want a very similar color to what I'm working on, but I want to go lighter each time, each layer I go lighter. Okay, so I'm keeping up with that same color that I was using, but now I'm going to add another scoop of yellow, another scoop of red. We're talking equal portions, yellow, red. Actually, more yellow than red. So some yellow, more yellow than red. And then a little bit of white. Mix in a little bit of white into that. Lighten it up just a bit. Okay. So let's start by emphasizing our tree in the front first. So on this tree on the far right, come on over to the left side, and we're going to start putting some highlights into the left side of the tree. So we're going to start by just having a nice clear, the whole left side of that tree. Get some little dashes coming down right on the left edge of the tree. And this is where you're going to see really clearly, oh yeah, look at that, it's overlapping the other tree. And I'm just going to do a close-up so you can see that up close. See that? Overlapping the other tree. Now I'm going to keep on taking it up higher into the tree. Just using little dashes all the way up my tree on the left side. Okay, so now let's create a fun little, let's see, what would we call this? We'll call it like a little animal cave or something. We're gonna create this spot right here. Now we're gonna darken that up, the inside of that, afterwards, but right now we're gonna focus on the highlights and how it kind of comes up and loops around. We're creating a little cave in the tree. So to do that, I'm going to take that same color and just come right about here and have that color loop its way around like that. Just making a nice little cave with some happy little animal. There we go. course, it's up to you. If you want to have something living in there, you can draw or paint a little fox or rabbit or whatever you want. Or nothing. Okay. I want to do the same thing on the other tree. Something maybe not exactly the same shape, but starting with the left side, get a nice little highlight of this color, this nice bright color on the left side. Nice little highlight on the left. And maybe not exactly the same, but another little hidey hole for an animal. Just like that. Can everybody see that? And while we've got this color on here, we're just going to bring a few more dashes of it into the tree. You kind of decide from here on in where you want those little dashes to be. But I am keeping them going vertical or up and down. I'm keeping those little dashes. Now, I'm not going to cover the whole tree, but I am going to bring this color in here and there. You can either follow exactly what I do on mine or just kind of find your own way with it. I don't want to lose the color that I have underneath. I'm just kind of adding to it. Same thing over here too. Just so you see a close-up of what's happening here. And while we have this color, we're going to keep on going into the other trees. Same thing. Just bring in some little dashes of this color. I'm gonna do a little close-up version again. And while you've got this color with this brush, this can kind of come into the grassy area and just bring up some little streaks of grass wherever you want them to be. I like to have a nice little layer of grass right up against the trees in the background too. Here we go. Just a little bit of a close-up of the grass. It's starting to come together. Okay. And with each color, you bring a little bit into the grass, and you can also bring a little bit into your walkway here. I'm just going to bring a few lines into the walkway. Now you could either do lines, like almost like boards, or you could just do dashes like it's pebbles. I'm going to do some little boards here, like a little wooden path in there. Okay. And let's see how everybody's doing here. Okay, so now we're ready to go a step lighter with our trees, same brush. All we're gonna do is add a little splash of white and yellow into our mixture. So a little splash of white and yellow into the mixture to lighten it up a bit. Okay, so this I especially want to emphasize the areas around my tree where we've got that little like animal living in there. So just bring a nice little highlight, especially where the tree is overlapping. This especially gets a little bit of light here. Nice little golden color. We're gonna lighten that even more than this, but for now this works. So especially those points where our trees are harboring some little critter. You get some nice little dashes in there, golden dashes. And I don't want as much of this color as I did the one beneath it, but a few little splashes of it throughout the tree would be really nice, especially along the left side. Just a few little splashes of it. You totally get to decide where those go, but not too many. We don't want it to take over. And the same with this tree. Just a few little splashes of it. You decide where. And once you've got your few little splashes of it, the lighter color in there, this makes a great grass color. So really emphasize this color in the grass. So bring a good amount of this color into your grass. This is definitely a Northern California grass color come summertime, right? Let me just zoom in on this. Okay. Now, like I said with the path, feel free to use your grass to cover over anything you want to in your path. If you don't like the shape of the curve or whatever, you can definitely bring in some of this grass color to just kind of break up your path a bit. Okay, very nice. And we're going to just zoom in on this one so you can see a little bit more about what's going on in the grass. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to, oh, and you also want to bring that same color into your path, just a few little spots. So while you've got that same lighter color on your brush, just bringing in a few tiny little highlights in there along the boards. You don't need much detail at all in the path, just kind of implied that there's some little planks there. That's all you need. If you even have a path. You might decide you don't even want one. Okay, now it's time for me to bring one last highlight into the tree. So all I'm going to do now is bring one more splash of white paint into that mixture. Just lighten it up one shade lighter with white paint. And this is just a few little dots on my tree. Just a few, right? Maybe especially around where our little animals live in here. Just a couple little splashes of this, not a lot of this color. This is reserved for special places where the sun is really hitting it. So just a few little splashes of this color for a highlight. Again, not too many, just a few. And then bring this, once you've got it, a few little splashes of it in the tree, you can bring just a few little highlights of it into the grass. Not everywhere, just a couple little spots. Get some little layer of highlights in the grass. Okay. Just a few, again. Don't want too much of that. And here's a close-up. Okay, so at this point, I'm done with my highlighting in the trees. I want to rinse off that medium brush and just bring a little bit of darkness in where our little animal shelters are. So with that medium-sized brush, I'm just going to mix some black and red together for a nice little shadow color. So just black and red. And that is mainly going to be inside where our little animals are residing. Get it nice and dark in there. With a little bit of black and red. There might be some other little spots at the bottom where you've got some darkness too. So black and red, especially inside of our little animal shelters. And maybe a little bit at the bottom of this tree too, why not? Okay. And let me just do a little zoom in of that. Okay, so to do our tree branches, here, let me just show you the branch I'm talking about. So these right here, kind of coming off of right in the front of the tree, these really give us a sense of perspective and layering. So let's do a couple of tree branches. I didn't do too many, just one on each side, or on the side a few more. So let's make a few of those. So rinsed off medium-sized brush, go right into your green paint. Okay, and mix a little bit of green and a little bit of blue together. A little bit of green, a little bit of blue. And then coming from the top right side, I'm going to bring in some dashes coming in at an angle. So let's look at this up close. So blue and green coming in on the right side. I've got some little dashes coming in at an angle, and they can kind of branch off into forks or Ys like that. Coming in at an angle. So it's blue and green. It'll show up more too once we get some highlights on it. I'm going to put a couple of those in there. It's up to you how far they come out. And maybe a few more as they come down the tree. Just a couple of them. Okay. Let's do the same thing up here, or actually, we'll get another layer of them on the right side first. So kind of coming in at an angle, blue and green. I'm going nice and thick with this. It's almost like there's a tree just off the edge here. I'm going to do a close up so you can see that really well. Can everybody see that? I'm going to do the same thing on the left, only just at the top. I'll do one big one at the top. So kind of coming in at an angle, angled down. Okay. And once you have your darker green blue color in there, you can add your highlights right away. So while it's still wet is the best time to start adding in those highlights. So the highlights are going to be white, yellow, and green. White, yellow, and green. And you don't need a lot, just a couple little dashes on each branch is all you need for a highlight. White, yellow, and green. Just maybe especially towards the end of each of your branches, just a couple little dashes of this will do, just to make it stand out. That got a little bit crazy. Okay, and let me just zoom in on this one. So you can see it up close, see those highlights, see the shadows. Okay, and the rest of the painting is, all it needs is a little bit more of this highlight color in the trees in the background and a few little sprigs of grass with this color. So I'm just going to demonstrate that, and you can kind of play around with it. All that's left of this is this color, and we're just going to bring in a few little highlights to some of the trees in the background with this color. And all of it, just a few little dots of it. You don't have to go crazy with it. Just a few little places, the white, yellow, and green. Just want a little hint of some highlights going on. Like the sun is hitting our trees way off in the distance. And I'm not going to do too much of this. Okay. And maybe just a few little sprigs of it in the grass. A few green things surviving the summer's heat. And that is what I'm going to call finished. So let me do a close-up.